All right. Okay, so this is gonna be a demonstration for doing the blending activity with the oil pastels. So obviously, before you even get started with the worksheet, just make sure to set up your space. Open up the newspaper, cover your desk. Make sure to grab a box of oil pastels, and then you should have like the worksheet to work on. Okay, so this assignment is pretty easy. You're just going to be blending two colors together to create a nice gradual gradient of like those two colors. So one combination is going to be the yellow and the orange, and it's going to be orange to red, red to blue, blue to green, and then green to yellow. So I want you to practice on these five different color combinations because more than likely though you will use about like 95% of the colors to blend these colors. So one of the things that's now one of the reasons why I'm having you blend these specific colors though in general is because if you take a look at your color wheels, and I just kind of grabbed like one of Sue's color wheels. You'll notice that all these colors are like colors that are next to each other, like yellow, orange, orange to red, red to purple, and etc. And then you're going to be kind of creating like in between colors to create those blending colors. So, when you blend the colors, it should look something like this, though. So, we'll grab the yellow, orange. Just keep in mind it says red, orange on here, though. But this is technically uses as orange, though. Okay, but pretty simple though. Again, read the newspapers though. You can always use it to clean up your pastels. I notice always the lighter color ones are always the messiest, especially like the yellow and the white. But same thing what we did before with your color wheels though. Kind of work in a circular motion with the colors, and you want to go lightly first with the oil pastels. And then once you kind of blend the colors together, then you can go a little bit darker with it. So I'm going to start with the yellow here. And then this yellow should transition into this orange down here. So I'm just going to do yellow on the top, orange on the bottom. And then these two colors are going to mix in between in the middle here. So, us mixing these colors, though, it creates basically three different colors. And this color scheme is called the analogous color scheme, where you're going to be mixing colors that are going to be kind of next to each other in the color wheel, and then when you transition between like the two, and I'll just kind of zoom in so you guys can see a little bit better. This is like where you want to actually start to mix the colors. So I tend to like to press a little bit harder with the lighter color, because usually like the lighter color tends to mix a little bit better. So yellow is lighter than the orange color. So if you're thinking about like lights and darks and values, though, that's like the lighter color. And then once you kind of mix the two colors together, then you can start to press a little harder with the other colors to just color in all the way. So again, go in a circular motion, and I do highly recommend going press lightly with the oil pastels, and then once you're confident with how the colors look, then you can press a little darker. If you're having trouble with blending the pastels together, though, really the trick is you have to work lightly and then press harder with it. The issue is if you press hard with the oil pastels, just like crayons, it gets really waxy, so you really can't add any more colors to it. But if you work it in more lightly though, then they should blend in a little bit nicer. So I'm just going over this again with the orange. I'm just pressing lightly though, and then going back with the yellow to mix the two. Okay, and it should look something like this though when you're done. All right, now you'll do the same thing with red, orange, blue, red. Let me zoom out. Blue, green, green, yellow. Okay, and those are pretty much like all the complementary schemes that you'll work with. And then if you want to practice with like even like on the bottom here, going from like a blue to a white. Let's even do a little bit extra practice. That's gonna be one other color we can mix between the two. Is this is like a monochromatic scene where we go from like a one color to a lighter color. So you get some nice, really, what they call like a gradation of like colors and values. A little orange got on my pastel, so just make sure you use the newspaper to just clean it up if you need to. So, and then if it's really messy, you can always throw away the newspapers. So I got a little bit of orange in there, but it's not a big deal though. Okay, now, yeah, this is pretty much like the next project that we'll be doing though is, we'll be using like those analogous color schemes. I have you guys probably working like a square. I like, I kind of like it better as a square though. But basically, we're doing like a little abstract drawing, coloring, design project. So you can see like how I'm using like the oranges transitioning to yellow, green to yellow. You could do one of the colors to white. So you're just gonna practice, just kind of mixing those colors, and getting some, really cool looking designs with the analogous color schemes, and kind of mixing with the complementaries as opposite colors. All right.